The missionary religion was not only negative, it was dangerous. It did more harm to Africa than good.
Today, the topic is the role of religion in our society, and we're going to be looking at Botswana and also Africa in general. And I have Reverend Rupert Hambira joining us today. Hambira.
Yes, thank you very much. And thank you for welcoming me. The world has gone through a major paradigm shift. This paradigm shift is largely due to the advances in science and technology. When it doesn't rain, we simply just think that God must be punishing us for something that we may have done either consciously or unconsciously. So all we should do is to turn to God in prayer, pray for rain. Now, that space has been taken by scientific explanations. And that simply marginalizes not only God, but the church. So we must accept that we will no longer, ever again be the powerful, be and all institution that everybody used to listen to. But that from our weakness, we can still be that small, still voice that still begins to influence society.
Just another controversial one, and I'm very keen on your view on this one because it's becoming more and more dominant in my view. The Africanization of religion and the psychosocial impacts of past deeds.
I don't know what Africa would have been had we not encountered missionary religion, and if we had encountered religion, Christianity, in any other way. What is being rejected by society today is Western Christianity. And I think that Christianity must die as church. We've always thought that the church has a mission for the world, but that thought has also become dated. The church does not have a mission for the world. It is God that has a mission for the world and invites the church to partner, to come along and partner with God.
Welcome to the Growth Well podcast, where we tap into a well of knowledge, innovation, and leadership to fuel Africa's growth. Here, we explore thought-provoking insights and expert knowledge that empower individuals and businesses to thrive across the continent. Whether it's personal development or professional advancement, our conversations inspire action and impact. This is Growth Well, where ideas flow and growth begins. Let's dive in.
Dumela Mbetso, and welcome again to Growth Well podcast. Today we have a fascinating topic. We're going to talk about a topic that I don't think we even talk about it enough in Botswana and also Africa, especially in terms of development of our people, from contributing to the economy or even the well-being of our people, who some of you know how dear it is to me. But today the topic is the role of religion in our society, and we're going to be looking at Botswana and also Africa in general. And I have Reverend Rupert Hambira joining us today, and he'll tell us a bit more about himself. But before we do that, let's do the prayer things. And he has humbly agreed just to give us a very short prayer so that all of you out there, our subscribers and followers, can also be blessed. Hambira.
Yes, thank you very much. Then thank you for welcoming me. Let us pray, dear friends. Dear God, thank you for this afternoon. Help us in this short podcast to reach everybody at the point of their greatest need. Help us to bring some light to our world that we feel needs it so badly. We pray in the name of Jesus Christ, your Son and our Savior. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Raralebo. Hambira, I think just for our viewers to know who you are, as I said, we go beyond just Botswana. So I have known you. You've also been a bit of a paparazzi on the news all the time. So I've come across you as an elder brother. But I just like first to appreciate you beyond the cloth, or who is Hambira in terms of a family man, a brother, a what. Can you just tell us a little bit about that?
My name, as you said, is Rupert Hambira. I hail from the southern tip of Botswana, from Makopong, Veda, Kokotsa area. My father started off in Tsapong, ultimately ended in Kokotsa, always moving north.
Okay.
And so I went to school, primary school, secondary school, Kosea Papito in the 70s, and then University of Botswana, where I studied history and theology, and then Rhodes University, where I did more professional work as for ordination.
Okay.
And then I did a master's degree in theology at the University of the Northwest. And then I'm currently hope to finish off a PhD with the University of Pretoria.
Wonderful.
I'm at that point of submission.
Okay.
And so
what is the topic of your PhD?
I'm actually exploring what makes human beings to turn on others and kill them for who they are. Genocide. Not for what they do, but for who they are. When people turn against others and kill them for who they are.
Beings,
who they are instead of what they do or do not do. So I'm looking at what in us causes genocides. And what role can the church play in post-genocide settings? What missional role can the church play in post-genocide settings? But that's also, now that I have gone into writing that, I realize that I'm talking church in a post-religious age. And that also poses its own
challenge, which we'll talk more about it as we go on. And in terms of, I'm sure being a Muruti, Umfundisi, and also studying, we keep meeting at airports and stuff like that. What I'm just interested, or what keeps you going from? Is it your spiritual nature, or what keeps you going as a Hambira, keeping you energized and enthusiastic and all that? Yeah.
I think maybe slightly different from other people. Some people get tired with being asked to serve.
To serve, yes.
What keeps me going is literally people asking me to assist them.
In what way?
Say somebody is not member of any church and they die and the minister is needed, I'll be more than happy. Or somebody doesn't go
whatever
to
denomination,
whatever denomination or no denomination, even if it's an atheist, or somebody a politician dies and or somebody's getting married. I don't even ask what church do you belong to. All that I ask is that they have asked for service. That keeps me going, feeling needed, because we assume that we will always be needed. But when we are needed, I think we should take advantage of it. My whole thing of coming into ministry was that sense of feeling that I am needed in this space to perform this particular function. And I have not abandoned that from day one. So just sense of being there with the people, providing solidarity, sitting where they sit, sharing their joys, sharing their pain, sharing their disappointments. And in a world where people of religious standing want to play big and want to post that they have answers. My approach is slightly different, that I don't have answers for the issues you are raising. I'm just providing solidarity. I just want to sit where you sit. I just want to feel how you feel for a moment, even if I cannot share that whole burden with you, just to feel how you feel and just be there for people, to be an extra hand or a shoulder they can hold on to for a moment. That keeps me going.
That's interesting. And I'm going to go off the script here a little bit because, as you know, you read a lot, I read a lot. I've been following this. We talked about values earlier on. And I've always been interested in, I grew up in Barolong Farms as a young boy with my grandfather, Ramutuba, and the rest. And there was a lot of community spirit. There was a lot of solidarity to the community. There was a lot of serving others. Even just it almost came naturally. I remember I attended a funeral a couple of months ago. One of the elders who came from our area talking about my grandfather. They'll just have a pot full of meat and food, even if the family has eaten, just for a passerby.
That's a society we were brought up in. Yes.
So this chap, right, David Brooks, he writes about how he's also quite, I don't know, he's a radical about the impact of individualism in our cultures and how America has almost gotten rotten because of hyper-individualism. And he's talking about this aspect of solidarity. And I almost connected back to Botole Ubuntu. When you say you feel so good and fulfilled when you give or when you serve, shouldn't this maybe be a universal aspect of human beings? In other words, maybe that's what we are meant to be. And all these distresses that we have, I'm just interested in your...
I think we self-create ourselves over time. You know, the social ills we suffer from are our own making. Particularly people who think in the spaces like politics and business and economics, people who feel they have made it in that area, feel that they don't need others. I grew up, and from my reading, one of the latest things that I read was from World Bank, and it says, World Bank is big into this argument of being inclusive. And they're saying, when the tide rises at ocean, all the boats at sea will rise with the tide.
I got you.
And I wish that could be the kind of value, that kind of value system that that influences us. Just that we begin to imagine a national life where if the national economy does well, then every person succeeds in that, sees the benefit of that, feels the benefit of that, a feel-good factor. I know that one of the things that you are particularly interested in is the happiness index. Correct. We creating a feel-good factor as churches, as civil society, as governments, even as township rollers. We have to make sure that our following has a feel-good factor from what we are doing.
Even Extension Gunners,
even Arsenal, we create, just make our people to see themselves, picture themselves in the success that we have made.
Yeah, because Hambira, when I say this quite a lot. You know, when I am at the farms, and you know this because you are also a farmer. When I see these youngsters that are, and I've driven around the farm with them. You know, the 15-year-olds that have failed from 3, and you can see the level of helplessness in their eyes. So what's next? I failed. You know, I failed my Form 3, wherever, and I don't know what I'll be doing. And then I'm actually looking for a job from you as a farm worker, you know, with nothing to offer. And they're so young. And some of the things about Botswana is this inequality, where I say, you know, although you can say I am on the upper side in terms of social status, but in the end, when I see someone like that and someone who's struggling, it affects my level of happiness. I'm not settled.
It does tinker with our sense of success. That it is not inclusive. That it is, and so really and truly, no child should fail school
at that age
and drop out. No. We should give up on no child at that. And I think this is where the role of religion is important. That if God does not give up on any one of us, as a government, as churches, as
why should we?
Institutions, as families, we should give up on no one. And I'm in this referring to including those that at the moment are trapped in drugs and substance abuse. They still are human. They still are created in the image of God. They can still be loved. And love as a force can still transform them. Now, meeting negative with negative. As parents, we I mean, in Botswana, when we talk to the specific context of Botswana, children fall out with their parents because even for very simple reasons that you are not like so-and-so's child.
Yes.
And not allowing the child to be themselves. They don't have to be an engineer because Mr. K is an engineer.
Yeah.
They don't have to be a lawyer because so-and-so, the father or the mother or a doctor. They just have to be allowed
to be
the
themselves.
space to be themselves.
Yeah.
And I tell you, Mr. K, now we are senior professional men in this society. But you know, when our elderly parents come from home and our younger sisters are working as a maid in somebody's house around here, they prefer to go and stay there instead of staying with us. And I've often wondered why. I've often wondered why they make that choice. And one of the people that a boy child can fail at JC and can still be a farm worker. He can still go and get a truck driver's license. He can still be a plant operator and be able to survive and even succeed. He can be a bus owner tomorrow. Many of the people that are running public transport in our country are people who really cannot talk of any higher education. I think the girl child needs special attention in terms of equipping, because ultimately, Mr. K, the person that walks into that intensive care ward when you need care is your daughter.
Yeah.
And that really touches me deeply. But you are right. Just on the overall, success must be inclusive.
Yeah.
And I think we have not done enough about that in the past. I'm not just saying this for any other reason other than the fact that I feel that there is still room for improvement.
How did this whole thing of spirituality and religion for you, when did it start? When did you, when you go back in terms of your life?
My father, I grew up as a child with one parent. My mother died very early in my childhood. So I'm brought up by my father, who is a very religious man. Like your grandfather, a church elder, not a minister, but a church elder. Who is very, very active in the church. And being a child of that nature, there is nobody you are left with. So when he goes to church, he always brings you along with. That's where it started. And so in the 70s, when I was at secondary school, then I made my own conscious decision that I would like to be a Christian person. And then later in life, in the 80s, at about 1986, I went to university now to study theology, and was ordained now about 32 years ago. In end of 1993, I was ordained a minister of Word and Sacrament in the United Congregational Church of Southern Africa. UCCSA. And then since then, I mean, I've taught at being principal of a theological school. I've been president of the Council of Churches. I have been president of my own denomination, which works in 7 countries. I'm now serving as a member of the Central Committee of the World Council of Churches.
Beautiful.
So my life has always somehow been shaped by my religious views and what people see in me. To ask me to serve in certain roles in the life of the church.
I grew up in the Roman Catholic. My mother comes from Luhuruchi, so they are Lutheran, they are Protestant. I always say the work ethic. We're talking about work ethic and Protestantism. Northern Europe is very strong. I always inherited that from my mother, from their Lutheran perspective. Yes. Whereby John Calvin and Luther and all those. So, but in the Roman Catholic Church, we've had some priests or fathers that have had moments of having to exit the clergy. And I wondered, just personally on your side, have you had a moment where you had doubts about your stance? I mean, sometimes you get these traumas or something happens and you you wonder. Have you had those moments in your...
Many times.
Many times.
It's a journey that has its ups and downs, and it's a journey that look as a minister of religion. Everybody thinks you have the answers for the questions they're dealing with.
Yeah.
And nobody thinks that you also are facing those same
100%,
issues
that everybody's facing
life.
every day. Yeah.
So yes, I've had many such moments. One such thing that stands out for me very clearly was when we finished at the university. I mean, in my world of finishing at the university, every person that literally graduated had a job. There was no looking for a job. You were looking for you were employable, and government was offering a place to go to. So I was offered a place in the diplomatic service.
Okay.
And I turned it down because I wanted.
Young as you were.
Yeah. And I turned it down because I wanted to go for ordination.
Okay.
So I took up the role of going for ministry seriously. And I've had moments, like that, where you're literally at the crossroads. And politics was one.
Yes, I remember you did try your luck in the politics.
Politics was one.
Yeah.
Though the church really, in that case, has a provision that you are granted a leave of absence, and when you finish,
you can always go back.
You can always go back.
And just talking about that one, because it's as I said, I was an altar boy. Bishop Eben Charles Joseph Murphy.
Yes.
Even during his funeral, I was one of those boys who were holding
Yes.
And then obviously grew up under Father Stalokosi and all that. And I'm relating to what you said because then I went to, and I was doing very well with sciences. So we ended up going to science.
Yes.
Then the whole thing of the Big Bang and the scientific aspect came in. You start questioning.
Yes.
So because I'm always under pressure from some of my family members who are, like my sister and my brother-in-law, they go to church, they can't do an outline. And I've had this, I take myself as highly spiritual, but not necessarily religious in terms of particular denomination, like I grew up in the Roman Church. But I love spirituality. I love religion in terms of the role it plays in society. But I've always had my struggles in terms of, and I'm sure you must, especially men like me, I'm sure you've had lots of that in men, especially who say, I don't know what happened. I'm really struggling to go to church. I can't find my spiritual belonging or a guy. Is that typical?
It is very, very typical. What has happened, Mr. K, is that the world has gone through a major paradigm shift. This paradigm shift is largely due to the advances in science and technology. So people generally are no longer turning to religion for the exigencies of everyday life.
Correct.
In the world where you and I were children, when it doesn't rain, we simply just think that God must be punishing us for something that we may have done either consciously or unconsciously. So all we should do is to turn to God and in prayer. Pray for rain. I suppose you've stayed now for the last 5-6 years of drought as a farmer, and you've hardly heard anybody saying, let's go and pray for rain.
Correct.
When a locust attacks your crops, it was also believed that God must be punishing us for something, so we must turn to God with prayer. When an epidemic like HIV or COVID
Corona,
recently hits society, it was always thought that God must be punishing us for something. Now, that space has been taken by scientific explanations. And that simply marginalizes not only God, but the church in society. So the church is no longer at the center of society. It is no longer the portal of information and service that it used to be.
And moral guidance, especially.
Moral guidance, especially. And so that does not mean that the church is irrelevant. Though it cannot take its relevance for granted. So it has to find a way of being
relevant
in the new and emerging dispensation. The problem with the dispensation that we are in is that it's always a moving target. It doesn't stop. We cannot say now we have a perfect theological solution because we were modern yesterday. We are postmodern today.
Now, yes.
Now, and we don't know what we will be tomorrow. And so in that moving paradigm, you have to consistently struggle with what it means to be church.
And are you doing that? I
think we are not doing it enough. We are not doing it enough. And our members themselves are not expecting us to do that.
They're not expecting you.
They only want us to regurgitate
the common
what they have always known.
Yeah.
Once you begin to jump into that space, people become uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But the major paradigm shift has emerged, and the questions that our children are asking are not the questions that you and I were asking. Not even. You know, today, Mr. K, it's our children. But who are your children and mine are terribly scared of my 2000.
Yes. Not true.
Even our own children, they are afraid of the younger generation that's coming behind them.
Yes.
And so even with politics, it will very soon, as it's emerging now, not matter whether you are BDP, BCP, or UDC. People will only say, what does this specific group or grouping offer in terms of the challenges that are facing us today? And I think that's the dynamic.
Yeah.
But to Basan people will care about party colors. But the direction that we are moving in my view, is that in which your offering, what you're offering, what you're holding out will matter. And how libile, even the excuses in that space, even the excuses, we have not been able to fulfill what we promised you because a certain epidemic emerged. Even that will not apply. Because look, you and I are on a plane regularly. Imagine if you're on a plane from here to Johannesburg and the pilot turns back and says he couldn't go any further because there was turbulence midway. I mean, you are trained
Actually,
to
in
navigate
simulations and complicated stuff.
To navigate turbulences and make sure that you deliver.
Exactly.
So non-delivery, whether it's in the church, non-delivery, whether it's in politics, its time is over. If we are given opportunity to deliver, we have no other explanation or excuse to give other than to move to the target and deliver.
Very good point. Now, this leads me to the distress that's going. You talked about the new generations, there are 20 years, 15 years who are not going to church, and also the crisis of mental health. And that actually runs across. I mean, these days, I don't know whether it was normal many years ago, you have even men over 60 actually committing suicide. And to be fair, I mean, there's a whole crisis, even in the US and the UK, where men commit suicide 4 times more than women. So there is also a little boy and man crisis going out there. But what I wanted to ask you is, with this emphasis, some people say, Botswana is actually not a secular state because 80% is Christian. But my issue is, do you think, and partly maybe you've answered it, has the evolving of Christianity, since it's bedding down into our culture in terms of our ecosystem, has it failed the people in terms of influencing the moral codes, the crime in politics, the corruption in politics, the crime? I mean, right now we're coming into a silly season. Everybody's worried about people climbing in and coming to rob and all that. So that's becoming now almost the norm. So the role of the church in influencing the moral code of society, do you think that has worked, or, as you said, it's time for introspection?
Yeah. The whole issue, in my view, is the marginalization of the church. We are predominantly Christian population within a secular state. And this arrangement is such that not only individuals, but the state also has played some critical role in marginalizing the church.
Really?
If I walk up to the door of the Botswana Meat Commission and I say, we are the church, we are doing 1, 2, 3, and 4, they will simply say, we don't support church, religious institutions. And so if we are not, for us to be able to begin as the church to respond to the national crisis, we need national support. We need to be supported such that we have the resources to be able to mobilize, and respond. We need to just have more than ministers in our employment. We need to have social workers. We need to have psychologists. We need to after going through, we are talking about men committing suicide. I recently did a funeral of somebody who had died and remained in his car from Friday to Tuesday.
Really?
And then found dead, taken to hospital, certified dead, taken to a mortuary, and was in such a bad state of decomposition.
I can imagine.
And being there, it's not only others, it's me who then, out of that situation, needs counseling, needs support, needs somebody to talk me through that. Why does something like this happen? And why do people who seem to be living in happy families still go out and privately, in their individual private space, commit suicide? So I really think that the church needs to be supported. And even if we don't have all these people necessarily in our employ, if, for example, there's a closer relationship between social workers at the council and the churches in the community, then that if there was closer communication and support, mutual support between the office of the district commissioner and the churches. I mean, why does the district commissioner have to be doing marriages?
Exactly. Yes.
If he's really having serious role as the head of the public service in Tabong, then why does he have to be doing? He should be facilitating ministers and people like that,
and playing the administrative aspects of it.
Absolutely. So I just say that I think for the church to live up to the expected role of making a difference in the lives of our communities, it needs to be supported a little better than it has been supported in the past, and it needs to be supported such that it is at the level of where the society is.
Can play role.
The church literally is lacking behind, and it doesn't matter how hard we shout and how loud we shout. It doesn't really matter how much we.
But Hambira, the Roman Catholic turns over $92 billion a year. Just the Roman Catholic.
Yeah.
And these are the mainstream churches here. UCCSA, you got the Anglican Church, you got the Roman Catholic Church, you got the Methodist Church, you got all these churches which are supported, I assume, with quite good resources from elsewhere. Now, how do they, fair enough, you're talking about resources from government or from just the citizens in Botswana to support the cause. But how do you argue against the fact that they're supposed to be? The Roman Catholic is known to be quite rich. I know I'm putting you on the spot to argue for that, but I'm talking from a general perspective.
Before I say that, I really just want to go back to a point to say to Mr. K that people today in our societies will not withhold or hold back from doing what they want to do because you threaten them with a punishment tomorrow. And I'm just wanting to show you that the message of the church on the overall is dated. It's talking about yesterday predominantly and tomorrow. It doesn't talk about what people are facing
now.
in society.
Yes.
And I think that's where we have to find truth.
Yeah, I like that.
I'm not criticizing anybody.
Yeah, no, I'm
just
with you.
saying.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that if the predominant message to the young people today is that you'll go to hell if you don't come to church.
Go to hell.
They would rather go to hell.
Like me, I'm still traumatized by the fact that when we did Sunday school when I was 7 years old, we were told, well, there's this guy with the big fork flying us in somewhere at the top there. I mean, that was
So the message has to be
repackaged.
Same message, so that it is able to speak to the generation of today. That's a starting point.
I like that.
And then of course there is a fair amount of money that is generated within the churches from the programs that we are running. Like I had a harvest and Thanksgiving service recently at Broadhurst, and money that a good amount of money that we get from partners around the world. But you must also understand that all that money serves no purpose if we cannot recruit young people today to join ministry, and young people that are of a nature that will receive and internalize theological education as to reinterpret it in terms of the challenges facing society today. And I would like to say to you that the other thing that we ought to, of course, rethink as church, that we've always thought that the church has a mission for the world. But that thought has also become dated. The church does not have a mission for the world. It is God that has a mission for the world and invites the church to partner, to come along and partner with God. And God.
The church is almost like an instrument.
Absolutely, an instrument in the hands of God.
I got you.
And so we really should begin to ask the WWJD question: what would Jesus do if he was in this situation? As the church every day, not just saying, I mean, we never do this in the church, but to say, but if Jesus was in this situation, what would he do? What would he do? And I think if we could start that way, then people will see in us something different. And so largely, unfortunately, we are classified as members clubs. And so we bury our own, we marry our own.
Exactly, and that's how it goes. Even higher priests to just marry and leave. Just another controversial one, and I'm very keen on your view on this one, because it's becoming more and more dominant in my view, the Africanization of religion and the psychosocial impacts of past deeds. Here I'm talking about, slavery, was obviously justified based on the Bible. And you have colonization that came when the Bible came in with the Europeans coming into Africa. And then also you had an example of South Africa, where you had apartheid, where churches like the Dutch Reformed Church were used to justify. And on a lighter note, I'm always teasing people, why is the Dutch Reformed Church in Botswana? Why can't you change the name? Because imagine a young person and he said, come to a church and it's called the Dutch Reformed Church. What does it take for us to, and this is a psychological thing, to actually just change the name? Would they refuse? Because the value in the church is there, but the way you package it and the narrative, even in the name. So I don't know what you feel about this thing of some people have been put off simply by the history of it and not by the value inside in terms of what is done, especially from an African, and also things like names. You are called Rupert. My name, Eke baptized in Michael. And over time, I decided that my middle name would be the most prominent name, which is Wabona, because I thought being an African comes first. And I'm seeing more and more it's happening. Or you come as missionaries and you tell the people of the soil of Africa, from now you are James, you are Joshua, you are such and such, and then you lose your own identity. Just that little crisis psychological aspect. I'm just keen on your take.
This is a loaded question. It's a very loaded question. It needs to be unpacked in a long series. So maybe for future we will need to sit down with different aspects
as we
of
said,
it.
Yes,
but you know, the whole history of the Western missionary enterprise was a byproduct of colonialism. Missionaries were literally referred to as unpaid agents of colonialism, and they were the people of the three C's: commerce, Christianity, and some God, gold, and guns. That time, but really behind the Christian Western missionary enterprise and colonialism were the pseudosciences, social Darwinism, and eugenics. These scientific theories taught that Africans were humans of a lesser order than Westerners.
Yes.
And therefore, that whatever they were holding on to, their names, their identities, their culture, their resources, their land, everything, we're holding on to as custodians until the rightful owners came, who were the white people. And it is in that context that modernization or contextualization, the rethinking of religion is aimed at reversing this false notion of who we are and where we come from, and that we are humans in our own right, created by God along the same lines, on the same basis with everybody else, and therefore that the name Wabona is actually more religious than Michael, because Wabona immediately puts God into the formula. Whatever we are going through, God sees Wabona.
I got you.
So it's more of it carries more religious and positive religious value than to say Michael. So, but again, that process to a very large extent ends at the university and theological seminaries, because you see, the Roman Catholics, the UCCSA, the Dutch Reformed, the Methodists, those books they're using at church every day that came with missionaries are like they fell from heaven. Yeah, you cannot interfere with them.
Tinker with them.
You cannot tinker with them. You cannot change them. The
Bibles by themselves.
They're almost more than the Bible itself. And so people will complain just that the minister is not using a worship book that they got from the missionaries, or a hymn that may be typically racist. A hymn that may actually, we are singing so loud, a hymn that stands in the tune of the English national anthem.
Correct.
You understand?
I'm with you.
And so what came with a white person is always regarded as best.
Correct.
And so
hence my psychological. What is this?
So the custodians of the religious tradition are no longer the ministers. It's the people in the pews. It's them that are resisting any forward movement. And to add insult to injury, then there is the emerging thing of tele-evangelism, North American tele-evangelistic influence, where now ministers pose to have answers.
Yes.
Where they can
prophets.
heal. Yes. They can tell you what is wrong with you. And yet they are not seeing it when it's coming to them. They can tell you that you're going to be in an accident. But that does not stop them from being in an accident. And they don't see their own when it's coming. Largely also, these prophecies are about diseases, about conditions, health conditions, and never about more public things.
Yeah.
That I mean, Mr. K, I listened to somebody this week trying to talk about, and it was on a major radio station that they were talking, just the question of knowledge. How do you know it's a drought year? Oh, we can see from the trees. Oh, we can see from the stars. Oh, we can see the shape of the moon. Oh, we can see the fruits of this particular tree.
Yeah.
Do we need to do all of that?
Yeah.
The drought is simply the fact of the deficiency of rain.
Correct.
We have not had enough rainfall.
Yeah,
that's the
drought.
first marker of drought.
Yeah.
So it's a question of who holds the knowledge and how do we use it? And the whole question of the relevance of the church is on where knowledge is, where the people in the pews seem to know more than what the ministers know.
Should know.
Or seem to know what needs to be done at a particular function more than what the minister knows. That becomes problematic.
It does.
And that's also exacerbated by the fact that if you go to the third extreme of this, then you have the fact that there are ministers who are trained. And there are ministers that have just emerged out of nowhere and claim to be ministers.
Yeah.
And that only worsens the situation. That only worsens
the overnight ones. We say they had a calling last night, and all of a sudden they open a church.
Yes, and both them and the church do not have a doctrinal tradition.
Yes,
that guides what they do.
Yeah, I have to say that and perhaps that's a perception of a normal professional here, in terms of your views, they almost tier or being quite liberal about about theology and the evolving of theology. And I just wanted to ask you, is this the prevailing type narrative from your colleagues in the clergy and in the management of the clergy? I mean, I expected the impact of colonization, because with UCCA and coming from a European perspective, you might say, no, that's a false premise. That's I don't know whether it's just me who expects that to come from the representatives of the Roman Catholic Church, from the Methodist Church, because they actually said they represent the missionaries. They come from that perspective. I'm quite pleasantly surprised.
No, the missionary religion was not only negative, it was dangerous. It did more harm to Africa than good. I don't know what Africa would have been had we not encountered missionary religion. And if we had encountered religion, Christianity, in any other
form.
Yeah. If Christianity was imported here, for example, by migrant workers that had gone to Europe, or our children that had gone to study in Europe and come back, but that it was brought by missionaries, meant that they also brought the extra baggage of imposing their cultural norms on our people. And those have destroyed the non-tangible African culture, which is irretrievable, a permanent loss to us, a permanent loss to us. Wawona is Wawona today, but Wawona may have taken this name from his grandfather, who took it from his grandfather before him. And when the Barolong then said Wawona, is that the same God that the Christians are talking about today?
Yeah.
Or was it a different notion of God? So I am only being absolutely honest to my conscience and to my readership. I was in a meeting recently in London, and somebody raised this same issue with me, that they are surprised at the way I look at the role of Christianity. But I mean, I am happy to be a Christian, but I would have probably still been a Christian in a very different way.
Yeah. I mean,
so we what is being rejected by society today is Western Christianity.
Yeah.
And I think that Christianity must die.
I'm one of those victims.
Yes.
I'm one of those victims. I mean, I sat in the Roman Catholic Church, where for minutes and minutes, they went on where Murutu goes on in Latin. Like, hello. And then, and then they wear the stuff that they wear in Rome when it's even, where it's even colder. And I'm like, but why can't we, the messages are good, but why can't we Africanize it so that it becomes relevant? It's almost abusing my being, to borrow a bit of a stronger position, if you know what I'm saying. So I'm really, really happy, and I wish that more of
it actually carries a much deeper meaning.
Yeah.
God can only hear me when I speak in the language of my colonizer.
Yes, yeah.
If I speak Latin. Today.
Today,
absolutely. Absolutely. Only as far as we use the language of the colonizer. But we are doing ourselves a huge disservice until our language becomes the language of technology and religion. It shows that we are not applying ourselves seriously to the context that we are facing.
I'm always talking to my kids about the value of language in terms of who you are.
Yeah.
It's fundamental. Now, let's go to the next one.
I'd like us to talk about that at a later stage.
Yes.
Hella to sit down here and talk about my views on what I pick when I listen to radio. Because language is very important for me. I hear Batu, for example, saying, Batu kiba akhisani. Meaning that you and the person next door, lo baahisani, but that's wrong. You are not baahisani. You can be anything else baahisani. Baahisani is to make peace.
Yeah, with each other.
With each other.
Yes.
It's about making peace.
Yeah.
And so language is very, very important. You hear Basimane football on Saturday morning, bare le morajo. As though the players at the back.
Yes.
As though Baba Kopile Batla You see what I'm talking about? Absolutely.
Hey. Now let's put a spin, because you've talked about some of the hindering aspects in terms of the growth of religion from a Botswana, from an Africa point of view. But the reality is that globally, there is a drop in religion. And this is purely through data. That especially after the post-war, when the economy rose, more prosperity, more urbanization, where the insecurity of people got wiped away, where they now almost did not felt that they didn't needed a God. Because as you know, really, religion traditionally, it's premised on when your existential security is under threat. Then what? Mudimo guy, there's an afterlife, mudimo thing and that type of thing. So that level where you've got, and one country that was a bit odd is the USA, which was the only modern country where it was dominated by religion. But according to Ronald Engelhardt, that's the guy, the book that I showed you earlier, who said from 1980 to 2020, now the religiosity in the United States has dropped at an alarming rate. But obviously countries like, especially talking about the happiness, what has really been quite interesting is that the happiest countries on earth are the most irreligious. Your Nordic countries that are getting empty. But the reasons that people portray is that the government, the systems, in Norway, people have 60% trust in the system. That's why they can pay 60% tax, because they know exactly where it's going. They say in Norway, when you leave your wallet in a restaurant, there is a very good chance that you'll get it back compared to countries like Brazil, Botswana, and so forth. So I just wanted to, so my take is that even a Botswana that's evolving economically, increasingly people would start walking away from traditional religion. So I just wanted your view on that, because that's another trend that I see where it's going to marginalize the role of religion, when people now believe that they basically say part of the self-expression movement, the individualistic movement, I don't need a God.
There are three levels, in my view. First is that one that you talked about in the Western world, where people are basically not seeing a need for God, where the place of God has basically been taken by technology. But in Africa,
technology in the broad
sense,
yeah, the broad sense.
In Africa, in the rest of the developing world, people are not rejecting religion as such, but they are rejecting a particular form of religion, which is Western religion.
I got you.
Western Christianity.
We're together.
Yeah. And then in the US, US is just coming after a few steps behind where Western European communities are in terms of being secularized.
Yes.
And you know that religion was far much more important in the US than in Europe, because people that ultimately settled there were predominantly came as religious refugees. They were
persecuted elsewhere.
Absolutely persecuted elsewhere, and so they remained holding on to that religion for a long time. Then the slavery issue came in, and the slaves also saw God as the ultimate source of their freedom and liberation, as those that were sold by their own, abused by their own, who could not look back for liberation to their home ground
base,
nor to the buyers that saw them as a commercial entity. I think for them, something higher, whether you call it God or what, had to be there
to provide that consolation.
Yes. And so America has in that sense remained religious in that sense. But you know, in the US, again, the decline is with the same group of churches: the Roman Catholics, the UCC, the Anglicans, and the right-wing religion is rising again because of the phenomenon you are raising. Because
the relevance.
No, more than even that, Mr. K, the fact that the whites are seeing their existential conditions threatened by the growing non-white population in the US, and therefore the white community is Trump-like. It's turning right. It's voting right of center. And that's the only thing in these high waters that they can hold on to.
That's interesting.
I think that for me is it's what pertains in this particular situation.
And the trend for us from a low-income countries, I mean, religiosity in South America, in Africa, is still a lot higher, obviously a lot higher than, because of our perceived existential threats that still exist. And people still struggle. That's why the churches in South Africa, in Zimbabwe, in Zambia, I mean, people just still, relative-wise, they still are in the churches. But do you think with economic development, that's almost inevitable that you will get the same trend?
You would remember Julius Nyerere with the advent of multi-party democracy. He is asked, everybody is turning multi-party. Zambia, your friend Kaunda has just lost. Zambia, Zimbabwe, everybody who's been one-party state. Mozambique, the war is over. Everybody is turning multi-party. What do you think? Then he says, when you see your neighbor forcefully cut, his beard being forcefully removed by other people, you better begin to wet your beard, because they may be coming
it's coming to you,
The process of secularization and the marginalization of church is coming here. It's coming. Our children are already catching it. I have 2 boys. I find it very difficult to convince them unless there's a special service to come with me to church.
Same thing.
And so I think the church here must begin to reposition itself. And you see, that's the point, actually, Mr. K. To choose to work not from a point of strength, but from the point of weakness. Church must accept weakness and work from the point of weakness instead of a point of strength.
Yeah.
And in that, the church is being Christ-like.
Yeah.
Because Christ
Yes.
chooses the cross
Correct.
over the sword. And most of the time we think something is powerless when it's weak.
Correct.
But it's not the case. If we were to take a rotten piece of meat and put it here in front of us here, the smell, the flies and everything, from weakness there is strength.
Absolutely.
And the church must begin to recognize the strength that emerges out of weakness. So we must accept that we will no longer ever again be the powerful, be an all institution that everybody used to listen to.
Yeah.
But that from our weakness, we can still be that small, still voice that still begins to influence society.
Yeah, powerful.
I think so.
Powerful. No, thanks, Hambir. I think on a last note, I just like to, if you have any, just for the individual out there that is struggling. We didn't cover the aspect of the difference between religion and spirituality. For instance, I adopted a lot of the moral values that came from the church, and that's really dictate the way I behave today. So that's why I'm so appreciative. And I characterize myself as being spiritual, especially I still, even though I don't go on my knees on top of my bed, my banker bed on as a young boy, I still do gratitude when I go to bed. Just the stuff that we're taught by about repackaging at the Sunday school. So I just want for you to, just for a person out there, I don't want to say young person, because there are people who are struggling with spirituality. Do you have any few final ways to say how they can introspect and reflect? I don't know how that can be listened.
Yeah.
Hey, just on a final note.
Yeah, I just want to say to that I think everyone out there, you are stronger than your problems. You're also stronger and better person than your yesterday. That you are here today, despite what happened yesterday, means that you are far much stronger person than the challenges that you face. And don't ever think that there is any one of us who is not facing challenges. They may be of a different nature or magnitude or degree, but we all have challenges. And so try to live one day at a time. Just one day at a time. And that the hope you have, that situations that you are facing today will be over tomorrow. That hope is what links you with God.
Yeah.
That hope is spiritual. That hope is your spirituality. And look, Mr. K, there is simply, the church used to give people the impression that salvation is not possible outside of the church.
Yeah.
It is not true.
It's not true.
It is not true. Salvation, anybody, any human being, anywhere, can encounter God.
Beautiful.
Without necessarily being associated with any club.
Yeah.
And we are many clubs in the world
many
today.
Membership clubs.
Yes. So you are right. Don't be hurried by anybody. Don't be rushed by anybody. Take your time. Come to church when you are ready to do so.
That, yeah.
When you feel like you want to do that. But don't be pressured. Take your time. And be hopeful that the future will be better. I mean, Botswana, we are hoping to get Ronaba Holo, Ronaldo, Mr. K. We are hoping to get 1.8 for Madia Wahudi. Lonago UB, you are getting in excess of 2,000.
Yes.
And Babireki go
4,000.
Are getting 4,000. There is a lot of hope in the air out there. I'm just being honest. There's just hope there. Just hope. There's hope out there. And we wish you well at this time. We wish you well. And quite apart from everything else, we've just entered the festive season, a time of great hope, love, and peace. I wish every one of you a peaceful Christmas time. And
beautiful.
to Mr. K and the rest of
the
you
crew,
in the crew. Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much. Muruti, really appreciate it.
Thank you
I know
very
we have a lot to cover, but we've agreed that next time we'll have a series. We'll have more of that. So thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
So much.
Thank you.